Morning, folks. This is Terry Trueblood from the Illinois FOP, Chair of Trustees over there, and it's another Facts Matter moment. Today we have a very interesting guest, is Shawn Roselieb, and Shawn is the Executive Director of the Illinois FOP Labor Council. Shawn, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Terry.
You bet. Well, folks, Shawn basically has the police unions in the state, 12,000+ people that are in the Labor Council, and more growing every day, of course. Shawn, this House bill we've been talking about for some time, this atrocious House Bill 3653, which is now a public act. Tell me how this affected, collective bargaining as a whole, and kind of your crystal ball on the future with that.
Well, how it was initially introduced and how it ended up being signed into law was night and day, to be honest with you. The way it was initially introduced, we were concerned that if it passed the way it was introduced, it would have been to turn out the lights and sell the offices. We would have been out of business, basically. But fortunately for us, other labor entities, stepped up, and it's ironic because typically when we look at politics, the Democrat politicians tend to be more labor oriented and labor friendly, and it's the Republican politicians that we have an issue with on the labor front. Well, in this was, sponsored and led by Democrat politicians, and basically what they were looking to do was to eliminate collective bargaining for strictly law enforcement. But unfortunately, or fortunately, I should say, that didn't go through. It had opposition from other labor organizations that stepped up, and they saw that what was happening for police organizations could also happen for others. Yeah. So exactly, a lot of discussion went on, and we come to where we are. The impact for us was very minimal. The only one topic, and that had to do with residency. Yeah, but it's only 2 of the units that we represent. This change affected only 9 jurisdictions in the state of Illinois.
Well, that is good that it got cooler minds prevailed. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. It was touch and go for a while, though. I mean, it was for those of us in law enforcement labor, it was a lot of sleepless nights.
Well, I know the whole team, the Labor Council and the state FOP, the Sheriff's Association chiefs, a lot of nights where you guys were up all night long trying to get a handle on what this was getting pushed through at the the 11th hour, so to speak. So
yeah, and like I said, it wasn't just us. It was other labor organizations that represent the trades, and some of our other friends that represent law enforcement. It wasn't just the FOP groups. It was a joint effort, but we all worked together. And you brought up a good point. This was the Chiefs Association. This was a Sheriff's Association. Typically, when we sit down for collective bargaining issues, the chiefs or the sheriffs they're sitting on the opposite side of the table. Right. So hasn't always been a great relationship. But in this instance, they understand the need for the process that we have. Without that, we would get nowhere.
Exactly. Well, I know a lot of naysayers would comment that, police unions, try to keep bad cops on the street. My response has always been, well, usually there's an emotional response from whatever management there is in a situation, and they just up and potentially fire somebody. But there's an actual process that has been agreed upon by both parties, and if you follow that process, there's nothing that you can't eliminate a police officer. So I think it's a complete misperception out there. You want to address some of that?
Yeah, we've heard that. It's been part of the rhetoric that we've been hearing with this anti-police movement and the defund the police movement. And some of those that have looked at some of the social issues and taken it that the police are the ones who are the problem here. We have heard that the police unions are the ones that keep bad cops on the street, and that's simply not true. I can tell you from before I was in the position that I'm in, when I was working in the field, I probably signed as many separation agreements and helped get people who weren't necessarily cut out to do this job out of the job and into something else. Maybe it would be they could still be in law enforcement, but not necessarily the position that they were in law enforcement.
Right.
We don't keep bad cops on the street, and we work hard to make sure that the profession is still a noble profession, and that we want to make sure those that are out there performing those duties are the best and the brightest that are out there.
Yeah, and that's, that brings to a point where, right now, I mean, in the back channels that we all have, we know that academies that are out there, some of the staffers are being told, that's the information we're getting anyway, don't flunk anybody out of the academy. And from the professional police point of view, clearly that's a good time to weed people out that shouldn't be in the profession. So the people that are trying to indicate that the law enforcement is, the problem, we're actually very much concerned about who's coming into our ranks. We do not want sluffers into this thing. And you really have to have a passion to do this job. You don't just do it. It's not just an 8 to 5 job and that sort of thing. Additionally, I would say that some people think that, getting rid of cops is a good thing. Well, they're doing it with this bill because early retirements, across the board, a mass exodus. And what's that going to leave when you cannot recruit anybody? And that's already happening around the state. So I don't know if you want to address any of that.
Yeah, these were some of the concerns that we tried expressing to politicians who may have been on the fence and weren't really sure. One minute they were going to not support the bill, and then the next minute they were signing or they were voting to pass this legislation. So, the things that we were trying to tell them is exactly what you said. You're gonna draw people out of this profession. It's gonna have very negative effects. I can tell you just within the last few days, I happen to be on my home is on the border of the Mississippi River, and we've been hearing of agencies on the other side of the river, on the west side of the river, that they're offering $10,000 signing bonuses for Illinois officers to come join their departments. And across the country, this has been a problem. Recruiting has been down. National polls have shown us 60 to 65% that they can't get people. So if you had 100 people apply for a position, now you're having 35. Right. And those 35, you're not getting the best of the applicants from society. Yeah. One department locally here, currently they have a list that's bigger than they've ever had on the Iowa side, but 62 of those applicants are certified Illinois officers.
That tells the story.
And that's actual numbers. That's not, and this is one location on one point of our border. So to think that this isn't happening all across Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, Kentucky, Indiana, they're all benefiting from what we've done to our officers in Illinois with this law.
We've even had, chiefs send letters from was Alabama thanking the governor Philly with this, and sending the officers in Florida. It's picking up some officers as well. And our internal poll showed that 60% were looking to get out early retirement. And then some are looking to move out of state. And of those, only half of them are going to stay in law enforcement, which is a huge loss, because I don't think folks realize just how much and how well-trained law enforcement officers have to be. I mean, you have your college, a lot of them have military, then they have the academy, which is, months and months. And then they have in-services constantly to keep up to date on the latest, greatest stuff. And, I even go to the they talk about some training issues. I'll go to the chokehold, and they wanted that banned. Well, Johnny come lately is what I say. The FOP was big in doing that in 2015, correct?
We haven't done that since 15, and I was out of law enforcement on the street before 15, but we were very instrumental in the passage of that. There was a very sweeping reform that was done. In Illinois, we worked with the chiefs and sheriffs and the legislature, and that's what it took, though. It took us working together. They came to us with an idea, and in some instances, legislation and language.
Right.
And we sat down and said, we don't like this part because of this, and we gave examples of why we thought this wouldn't work or that wouldn't work, and we crafted the language that we could all live with.
Right.
It's just like a negotiation. You're not going to get everything that you want when you go to the table, right? But
True.
when you work together, you meet in a point where you can all live.
Absolutely.
And in this, with this legislation that went through, that didn't happen.
We were shut out.
Some of the politicians can say what they want, but there was not one time where the FOP sat at the table to review language and to go over it like we've always done in the past.
Right. Well, and I would like to point out as we start to close this thing down, just to the viewers out there, number one, the unions don't hire anybody. Number two, they don't assign anybody. Number three, they don't promote anybody. And number four, they don't fire anybody. All they do is do some negotiations for their wages and, how they work. And then if somebody does get in trouble, they protect their rights as they go through the process, like every American citizen gets.
Yeah. So like you were saying, Terry, about the unions not hiring, firing. When we first formed the coalition, one of the very first meetings when we sat in Springfield with our new friends, we said, this was kind of what we were hoping to do. In the very first meeting, I said to the sheriffs and the chiefs, we're not against you, but you have to understand, we're not here to keep bad cops on the street. That's the rhetoric that's out there.
Right.
And I brought up exactly what you said. And I made that point that, look, we represent whoever is put into that bargaining unit, right? We're the certified bargaining agent for a unit, and it's not our job to do that background check and to hire that person. We're stuck with whoever comes in, good and bad. Mm-hmm. Okay. So everybody that gets hired has the same rights as any citizen, across our country has. You have the right to due process. You have certain rights that the employer has to follow. And all we do is make sure that due process and those rights are upheld for everybody. We don't have a choice. We have a duty to represent them. And it doesn't matter who it is. All we are concerned about is the process. As long as the process is followed, we never stand to keep a bad officer on the street. That's not our goal.
Right. Absolutely. I was told
come from the profession. I come from the profession. We're both retired officers, and I can guarantee you that would make you sick when you were on the street, and it would do the same for me. If we saw a bad officer, we didn't want to work with that person. And in our supervisory roles, we've done things where we've written people up. We're labor leaders, but labor leaders write people up. They understand the process. They see
a lot of the for people who don't understand, it's not in every situation a huge adversarial situation. There's a lot of times that the management communicates with union leadership and says, hey, we got a problem with this guy. Can you get a handle on him or talk to him before we have to? And many times the union leadership's absolutely, I'm 100% agreement with you. And because they don't want that in their ranks. And so I think people need to understand that is a misconception that we keep bad cops. That's the last thing we want. As the classic statement, a good cop, the last thing he wants is a bad cop on the street, on his department. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So as we start to wrap this up, Shawn, is there any closing statements you'd like to make, maybe even to new hires that are coming on or people thinking about being in law enforcement?
Well, for new hires, there's some in our field that are hanging their heads and getting maybe a defeatist outlook on things. I like to be optimistic about it, and you hear the adage of the pendulum and how it swings, and the pendulum is about as far to the left as it can get. I kind of have a little different outtake on that. You remember when we were kids on the playground, when you would get in that swing, and the goal was always to get going high enough that you go all the way over the bar, right?
Right.
So if we get it over that bar, we're in a bad place right now. But imagine the momentum that we're going to have when we're on the downswing coming the other way.
Yeah, because the pendulum does swing. And anybody who's been around and observed politics for any time at all knows that's the case. And so, everybody just, kind of hold their breath a little bit here and see if we can't ride this thing out and have calmer minds and good thoughts. And if they would allow police to be involved, we can come up with some great solutions. I've oftentimes said, take 1920 policing to 2020 policing. In that 100 years, guess who did most of the reforms? Our own profession. And I've said the very same thing. I said, if they decide they're going to reform brain surgery next year, which I hope they don't, but if they decided that, I would sure hope they'd have a couple of brain surgeons on that committee.
Consult the doctors, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, well, Shawn,
Terry, I want to just thank you for the work. I've seen some of the podcasts that you guys have put out, and the work that you're doing at the state lodge. Our members need to understand that most of these are voluntary positions, and it's guys that are dedicating a better portion of your time to doing this type of thing and educating the public. And thank you for your help in what you're doing.
Well, and I appreciate that, Shawn. And for those who want to hear a technical analysis of these different issues, you have a series of your staff attorneys doing some podcasts that goes through the very technical details. So we want to refer people to your website to get to that.
Yeah, they can, they're on our website at FOP.org, or you can follow us on Twitter or Facebook, Illinois Fraternal Order of Police Labor Council.
Perfect. Well, Shawn, thanks so much for being on today. And folks, I hope you picked up a little bit of knowledge about collective bargaining, what it's all about. And, Shawn's the man. I mean, he's running the show over there, and he's got a lot of good staff with him. And I really appreciate your time. And for us here at the Facts Matters moment, we'll see you next time. Thanks, Shawn.